I know they both have to have it because they're like.
Are they animals or something?
Yeah.
That makes
Well,
sense.
now we're gonna have to repaint their nails.
Are you doing it?
I don't have to paint my nails. I'm in the front.
All right, here we go. Find your seats. That's wrong.
At school, yeah.
He just doesn't know how to take it. Yeah. So his fingers are blind.
All right, any questions on the homework? I had one student come up and said, my V's didn't look like, or my parabolas didn't look like parabolas. Absolutely positively, if your parabola didn't look like parabola, you got a math mistake. How do you identify your math mistakes for those? I just say that generally the mistakes that you make is when there's negatives involved. So I don't know, if you have an x squared minus 8x, minus 4, or maybe it's even worse, a negative 2x squared. For these can get pretty ugly, right? Because there's so many negatives floating around. You have to do a bunch of calculations. You can drop a negative so easy, and you don't get it. So, I mean, obviously there's a mistake. But the person also said, well, I know the process. I just didn't get a problem. Well, two things we do in math. One, you understand the process, and two, can you actually do the calculations? So if you're failing on the calculation part, that's actually less as important as understanding the process. You understand the process, people make math mistakes. You see me make math mistakes, but you got to know the process. That's step one. Step two, we try to work on that. How many of those questions will be on the test? Maybe one, so don't sweat it, right? All right, any specific questions on the homework? All right, there were only, what, 4 of those. All right. Hey, we had to talk about GPAs, and well, really was to talk about motivations and just remember that, in anything in life that you get rewarded or punished for your actions. If you do the correct things, you're going to get rewarded for them. You get rewarded more if you do them really well, right? You get punished, depending upon what your definition of punishment is, you get punished when you don't meet expectations. Sometimes those punishments are not very severe. Sometimes those punishments are very severe. For those of us in high school, we've kind of reached this point in the year where the punishment is very severe. So the punishment for getting an F first quarter is, well, it's really up to your parents what that punishment is. The punishment that the school and the teachers give to you at the end of the year for 4 straight Fs are, well, you don't pass the class type thing. And yeah, it is punishment. I'll just say this. For those of you that see me for tutoring, I've given you this speech. I've never, ever had a student, ever, nor will I, that actually works and fails my class. Ever. You haven't failed.
Oh.
Now, never had a student who does their homework, who shows up and asks questions. I've had plenty of students, and I should say maybe plenty is not the right word, but I've had students that have, they kind of show up, they don't do their homework, they don't really study for tests, and those students do fail. I mean, honest God, fail. But I'll just say, if you make an effort in a math class, granted, you're probably not going to pass with a B. You're certainly not going to pass with an A. Most likely, for those students who struggle, you're probably in the C/D range, but that's still passing. And depending upon what kind of effort you want to make, it really depends upon what that grade is, whether it's closer to the B or it's closer to the D. But no, I never have a student that shows up, participates, really tries to learn, doesn't stare at the walls.
I'm not staring at the walls. I'm staring at you.
Why do you think I'm asking you that question?
You have to look at the walls.
You're not.
That's where.
But I'm just saying, if you're that kind of student who, I mean, when you do some self-reflection, like, yeah, I really didn't do much homework this year. Yeah, I never studied for a test. I mean, you got no one to blame but yourself. The nice thing is that until you're 18, you got plenty of opportunities. When you're 18, unfortunately, life just can come up and start smacking you. When you're 18, all the support structures of society kind of go away in the sense of, you know, up until you're 18, life provides a lot for you, right? Like we literally gave you this year free lunch. There's a famous saying, there's no such thing as free
What,
lunch.
have you not noticed
not
that you're not
noticed?
paying for your
This
lunch?
year, you got, now, granted, the saying is correct in the sense that somebody had to pay for that food. And it was your parents, right?
Oh, so
When they pay
technically it wasn't
taxes, the taxes go to pay for things like
My
that.
parents don't pay that.
Shut
I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm
free.
joking.
It was free to me.
Everybody
That's
pays
tax
taxes.
fraud.
You can't walk into a store and not pay taxes.
Well, it's possible, you just don't get caught.
Not in a store.
Yeah, just don't get caught.
Yeah, but how do you not pay taxes?
I don't know.
You just
don't
don't
pay.
pay.
You
Yeah.
just
Your parents deal with some of those people. Up until you're 18, we send you to school, right? It doesn't cost you a dime. Teachers teach you stuff, right? They actually, like, we get concerned when you're not making progress, especially for those of you going to college. I mean, that kind of goes away. I'm not going to say that there are mean, horrible teachers in college, but the concern over your grades goes away in college.
Oh, yeah.
You can show up or not show up. Instructor doesn't truly care, right? They teach their class. If you're there to listen, to pay attention, they'll help you. There were a couple of college professors I had that were really not helpful, but most of them were, like high school teachers. They were helpful. They did care about their students, but they absolutely don't care whether you pass or fail, in the sense of nothing happens. If half of my class fails, the principal comes and talks to me, right? Like, what are you doing? You didn't teach those kids. They half the kids, right? We actually have a standard that says, a certain number of kids in your class, if they do not pass, then you're supposed to reteach the material. And I never reach, I make sure I don't give tests until 70% or more can pass the test. That's the standard, by the way. 70% of your kids need to pass the test, otherwise you're required, at least at this school, to reteach. And I don't ever give a test. That's why sometimes you'll see me give 2 days of a practice test, because I know that some people need to see a bit more. All right, I'm using up a lot of time today because today is the easiest class of the year.
Then
Is
just
it
don't give
truly
it
though?
to
Is
us.
it?
It
Is
is
this like?
truly the easiest class. It will take me all of 10 minutes to teach. Now,
I trust you.
Here's the thing about high-level math, which you're doing now to 1 and higher, is the fact that the easy stuff doesn't look easy. However, to the people that are in it and that pay attention, they're like, oh yeah, this is easy. Today, literally by coincidence, in geometry, I taught the easiest class of the year. If I showed you what they're doing right now, you would like, oh my God, that's the hardest thing I've ever seen. But for them, it was the easiest class of the year because it really was easy, right? For you, trust me when I say I'm going to show you something that's ridiculously easy. There's not a single 8th grader that can do it because they don't know Algebra 1. But your knowledge and the material that we're covering today come together really well, and you're going to say, okay, this is pretty easy. Is it forgettable? Yeah, in some sense. You might forget the details of it, but you won't forget doing this. This is pretty simple. Okay, so without further ado, let's do something simple. This will take me about 10 minutes to teach. Obviously, I will probably talk longer than 10 minutes, but I didn't collect homework, yes?
Yes.
Okay. I will take me about 10 minutes to teach. Some of you will see the first example and like, got it. You don't say anything else. Others of you, did you turn your homework? Okay. Others of you, I need to record this stuff. So I'm gonna make her turn red. Anna is a really good student. You're a really good student. I have other good students in here as well, but like
me?
I literally just asked you guys to do what? Turn in your homework. Guess what Anna did?
Turn in her homework.
She didn't turn in her homework. Do you know why?
Because you don't need to.
No. That's what some students would do. Because she's like, I didn't get it. You got to explain something. I'm just going to say that's what a good student does. They're not going to be satisfied with, I don't know, he said to turn it. No, you need to answer my question, right? You need to explain it to me.
that make me a bad student if I'm not asked that student?
Doesn't make you a bad student. I'm just saying what a good student does is when you encounter, you do the same thing. Riley does the same thing. Brady's done it maybe once. But the rest of you guys, I've never once heard you say, I didn't get this. Could you explain it to me?
I have. I have once, and that
She
was
did it
2
today.
years ago.
She was the first person to walk up to me today and say, I didn't get it. Right? But I'm just saying that's what you need to do in all of your classes. Right? That you go a little bit beyond what the current expectation. She also knows that homework's only worth what 10% of your grade.
And she does good on her tests.
She does good on her tests, but I mean, you guys need to do what she does. Right?
Okay.
If it is something you don't understand, ask your teacher until you do understand it. All right. Did I make it turn red? Okay, good.
No, my tutoring just called me obnoxious. Linda, Trudy, I think the one time I came to tutoring, you looked at me for 45 seconds and I understood it without you having to.
A lot of times that happens where it's not the quantity of time you spend, it's just that one little nugget. I know I've talked about the learning process before. I know I talked about it in geometry. Maybe I didn't talk about it now. It's one. You've heard the word CRUX? Cyrix. No.
Crucifixion.
Yeah, that's kind of where it comes from.
I guessed it right
I
now.
lost my pen. All right.
Here, you're gonna crucify us just for
CRUX. It's called crux. Have you ever heard the expression, it's the crux of the matter?
Nope.
Right, what does it mean? What does it mean?
I don't know. Or
So,
it's important.
In mountain climbing, they use this word. And if you look at the profile of a mountain climb, right, you start out, well, there's a mountain, obviously. You start off, and there's kind of generally, everybody done the incline before?
Yes.
Right, the incline kind of goes like this. Right, it starts off like this, and then it goes up pretty darn steep, and then there's this middle section. And then it goes really, 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 really way back up, and then it has this one little piece like that. And most people are like, I just need to get to right there. Because they think that's the top, and they get right here, and then they're like, oh, there's more to go.
It's super annoying.
Right? Anyway, this is called the crux. And the crux is the part of the climb that's the hardest part. And if you can just get over that part, the rest is simple. Okay? Math is kind of like that. Is that you generally, geometry, we see this all the time, is that the teacher just simply needs to tell you how to do, if this is the length of the problem, time-wise, and you get stuck right here, if the teacher just told you this, hey, just multiply those two numbers together, you can do the rest. So a lot of times what happens in the explanation is, hey, you just need to multiply. Oh, got it. Like it's literally that quick. It happens all the time in geometry. Okay. All right. And you guys will get to experience that next year. All right. Calendar. Hey, we actually literally just have 2 classes left, today and Thursday.
Like
Sorry,
for the rest of
today
the
and
year?
tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow, because I forgot to change this.
No,
Field
yeah.
day is Friday now. So field day will move to Friday, so that means 12-5 tomorrow. That means tomorrow is the last official class of the year. The rest is just reviews, okay? For those of you that are like from the speech yesterday, like, woo, I got to get a B, you got this test and you got semester final.
I can do
If I
that.
fail that test.
This test and semester final. I'm going to do 2 days of review for this test. Now, granted, you're going to have a weekend in between, so you got even more time. But we all know what probably happens a weekend. Some of you pay no attention to math. I'm just going to warn you. We're going to have a weekend in between the first review and the test. Test isn't on Monday, it's on Tuesday. This is going to be a medium test. It's not going to be an easy test. It's not going to be a hard test, but it'll be a medium. Semester final, it's going to be medium as well, too. So the test for some of you that need to get a very good score on, not going to be an easy test. As always in my class, hopefully you figured this out by now. It's right at the end of the year. I don't ever give you a test that isn't like the practice test.
Never.
If you can do a practice test, well, geometry, I changed that. Okay, geometry is a different story. But Algebra 1, whatever the practice test looks like is what the real test looks like. Just fewer questions. All right, here we go. Pretty big bold claim. I said today is the easiest class of the year. Let's see if I'm right. So they would take you about 10 minutes. 1 through 12 problems should take you about 10 minutes to do.
Okay, we're gonna time you.
Okay, you gotta be done at
No, I said
15.
this takes you 10 minutes.
No,
the homework.
you have to be done.
I could teach this in 10 minutes if I were not interrupted.
Don't get
If I
It's working.
literally just sped through it,
Does
I'm
he
gonna
do it?
go at a comfortable pace, but it's not gonna take me 20 minutes, probably 15 minutes.
Ooh, that's 5
And at
minutes fast.
55,
5 minutes
right? You
slow.
got till the 11.
I will be done by noon.
We'll
Alright.
see.
I will be done by noon.
Okay, go.
I am going. You're copying this down.
Oh,
You did.
already did.
What time is it? All right.
All right. We paying attention, Aiden, Caden? Here we go. We're going to discriminate today.
Whoa.
Whoa.
In math, we literally have that word, discriminate, except we call it discriminant. It's the same root, right? It means making a judgment upon something based upon its physical characteristics. Okay? So we are going to hate all blonde kids because they're obviously evil.
Not Chris.
Not Chris. Wear your mask.
All right. No, obviously, mathematically speaking, though, it has the same connotation, right? We are going to look at something, and based upon its physical characteristics, we are going to make a conclusion. When you discriminate, right? Typically, we use that as pejorative, right? Meaning a bad thing. We make a decision based upon the color of your eyes, or the color of your hair, or the color of your skin, that sort of thing. And then we do something about it. Like we make a decision. No, I'm not going to like you because you have, blue eyes, that sort of thing. Okay, right? All right. In Algebra 1, it is literally that idea. We are going to discriminate against something based upon a physical characteristic of the equation.
Oh, okay.
All right. So here we go. I got 13 minutes left. All right.
But
There's a big but here, and the but is it's Algebra 1. Even though it's easy, it's going to be dealing with stuff that looks complicated. But you got to trust me when I say it is really easy. You just got to pay attention. Here we go. All right. We've been dealing with the entire chapter is solving quadratics. Remember quadratics from last night? The physical picture of what's going on, the shape of it, is a parabola. The algebraic visual is an equation where x is to the second power. When we ask you to solve it visually, we're asking you to find where does the parabola cross the x-axis. Like literally, where? Last night for homework, that's what you did. It crosses at -6 and -2, the x values. Algebraically, well, we got 3 techniques, right? We can solve by factoring, we can solve by complete the square, we can solve by quadratic formula, okay? We are literally just looking where does y equals 0, okay? We start off this chapter by solving quadratics by factoring. Supposed to be paying attention. Okay? This one is factorable. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 plus 2 is 8, which is why the 2 answers are negative. We set both equal to 0. That one's factorable. Always, if it's factorable, solve it by factoring. Don't use any of the other techniques. We have 2 other techniques, one that no one likes, called complete the square. Move the 12 over, make a new C, 4 divided, take the B value divided by 2 and square it. 8 divided by 2 is 4, 4 squared is 16. We add 16 to both sides. We factor this. This factors into B divided by 2 squared. 16 minus 12 is 4. Take the square root of both sides. We still get -6 and -2. The last technique is the quadratic formula, right? We take this big long honking formula. A is 1, B is 8, C is 12. Plug those numbers into that big long formula right there and go to town. Go to town, go to town, go to town. I'm skipping the details because we've done this before. Okay? We still get -6, -2. The entire chapter is about solving quadratics. Okay? We're to focus today on method number 3. That's the quadratic formula. You like the whole thing? You'll see. The quadratic formula says if the equation that's quadratic looks like this, remember it's got to be in standard form. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. As long as it says equals 0, we can use this. Then we plug off the a, the b, and the c, we throw it into that formula right there. Okay? That's how we solve using the quadratic formula. Okay? Real quick one. Hey, does this equation look like that? Nope, I need to move the 2 to the other side. Subtract 2 from both sides. Now it looks like that. You see it? A is, B is, and C is. We can throw those values into there. No, I'm not going to spend much time doing this because this isn't what we're doing today. I'm just reminding you of what this does. This solves that equation. That gives me a positive 4. That gives me 16. That gives me a positive 8. That gives me 2. That gives me 24. Square root of 24 is a decimal number, plus or minus. Turns out to be about 4.9. I write the 2 equations, 4 plus 4.9 over 2 and 4 minus 4.9 over 2. I do that math, I get to my 2 answers. This is one of those ones, this is not factorable. This is one of those ones where you don't have the option. It's either complete the square or quadratic formula. I'm not doing complete the square, I'm reaching for that sucker right from the very start. Okay? Solving using quadratic formula. Remember, these would be the 2 x values where the parabola, if I were to draw it, A is positive, so it's smiley face. I don't know what it looks like, but it's a smiley face. And this point right here is negative 4.5 or 0.45. And this one right here is 4.45. That's the visual representation of what you just did. Cool. Oh, by the way, you don't have to draw anything. You've got to do this. That's it. You're just plugging numbers in, see what you get. Okay. How you change the square root of 24 to 4.9? Well, you got to have a calculator. It's not what we're doing today. It's not what we're doing on the test. Okay. All right. It turns out that that big long honking formula does more than what it appears, and that's what the remainder of the class, which is the actual class, is on. Right? The remainder of the class is going to talk about something called the discriminant. It discriminates. Okay? So this is, don't write this down yet, but we'll write it down here in a second. Okay? It turns out that parabolas can only happen in one of 3 ways. Here's the first way. It means that the parabola goes through the x-axis in 2 locations. I don't care whether it's smiley face or frowny face, concave up or concave down. Notice there are 2 spots where it crosses the x-axis. When we solve that equation using quadratic formula or factoring or complete the square, we get 2 answers. But other things can happen when you draw a parabola. Well, it doesn't have to happen. It doesn't have to cross in 2 spots. Aiden, on the board, that's where the math is. Okay. The parabola could touch in 1 location. If I move this parabola upwards until just the vertex touches the x-axis, well, then there's only 1 solution. If I move this one down so it only touches in 1 location, there's 1 solution. Yeah.
Can they ever be sideways?
No, it's not a function. Because of vertical line test. Lastly, if I continue to move this parabola up, and continue to move this parabola down, how many places would it touch?
0.
Those are the 3 things that can happen. And it turns out that you can tell whether the quadratic will have 2, 1, or no solutions by discriminating. That's what we're doing. That's what today's class is on. So it turns out that we can use this sucker right here to tell from the very start whether it has 2, 1, or no solutions right from the very start. You see what I just put a box around?
Yes.
That is called the discriminant. The discriminant, box 1, I'm not sure why I did that. It should be an empty box.
No, box 2 is empty.
This may be, box 1 I think is the messed up one. All right, write this down. B squared minus 4AC. What's?
I was gonna say up there it says box 2.
I know there's some mistake. Oh, it does say box 2, doesn't it? Maybe I had something going on here. Not the whole thing, just this part right here is called the discriminant. And it turns out why does it discriminate? It tells you whether you have 2, 1, or no solutions. How is that possible, you say? Well, that's what this class is on. That part right here, just this part, it comes from that right there, tells you whether you have 2, 1, or no solutions. Here's why. You ready? Can you take the square root of a negative number? There's no solutions. If you ever simplified, get a negative number, this sucker doesn't work. That will only happen when there's no solutions. What happens if you do b squared minus 4ac and you get 0? What's the square root of 0? Well, then you get negative b over 2a. That's one number, one solution. What happens if you get a positive number here, like the previous slide? We get two solutions. So we better write that down. The discriminant predicts the total number of solutions. And there's only three possibilities. This thing right here predicts whether you're going to have 2, 1, or no solutions. So the questions tonight, well, homework, are simply going to say how many solutions. And you're like, oh, I don't know. Well, the answers are either none, 1, or 2. Like literally 0, 1, or 2. That's it. Every answer is going to be say 0, 1, or 2. It's not going to ask you what are the solutions. It's going to say how many solutions. How do you find it out? b squared minus 4ac. That's it. You're going to square a number. You're going to multiply 4 times a times c. You subtract those two values, and you're done with one extra step. It's going to be right here. Okay. You need to put in box number 2, 2 solutions, 1 solution, no solution, and then above it, you're going to write what's here in yellow. If b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, I mean, like literally, the number is bigger than 0. We don't care what the number is, just that it's bigger than 0. It's 2 solutions. If b squared minus 4ac is literally the number 0, 1 solution. And if b squared minus 4ac is negative, no solutions. So what am I asking you to do? I'm going to give you a quadratic. Has to be put in standard form. I'm going to ask you to do b, not the whole thing, but just b squared minus 4ac. You're either going to get a positive number, 0, or negative. Don't care what the number is. But if it's positive, you write 2 solutions. If it's negative, you write no solutions. And if you do get 0, it's 1 solution. You can do both the first one and the third one without really doing the math. I mean, like literally, without really doing the math. You just kind of think it through. Hey, if I square this number and I multiply that, will I get a positive or negative number? You're going to know that just by looking at the numbers. The 0, you actually got to do the math. But you'll be able to tell whether it's positive or negative just by looking without actually squaring or multiplying. I'm going to have to show that to you in 7 minutes. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
I got 3 examples right here. Every single one says equals 0. You do have to have that as your first step. It has to say equals 0. Okay. Visually, I can already tell how many solutions.
2, 1, 2.
How many solutions? How many solutions? Okay. Now watch the math. The math says I take b, subtract minus 4 times ac. So a is 1, b is negative 6, c is 7. So there's b squared minus 4ac. See what I did? Will this give you a positive or negative number right here? Is this going to be a positive or negative number? What's 6 squared? What's 4 times 7? Are you going to get a positive or negative number when you do 36 minus whatever that number is? Well, it's 36 minus 28. Is going to be positive or negative? So if it's positive, you have 2 solutions. I don't care that the number is 8. I literally don't care. Technically, the discriminant is 8. The question isn't going to say what's the discriminant. It's going to say how many solutions. If you get a positive number, well, the answer is 2 solutions. Watch this one. 1, negative 6, 9. That's going to give me 36. That's going to give me 36 minus 36.
0.
There's 1 solution. That's the hardest one to remember. You get a 0, you're really going to want to write 0 solution. No, when you get a 0, it's 1 solution.
You should just say none.
Okay. 1, negative 6, 11. That's going to give me 36. That's going to give me negative 44.
So like even if it's actually one solution thing, so it's 0. Shouldn't that mean like there's no solution? It has a 0.
And I'm going to say the reason is because that's just what the discriminant ends up being 0. So you take the square root of 0 and you get 0. So you're doing negative b plus or minus 0 all over 2a. So you get an answer. The reason why you don't get an answer here is because what's underneath the square root symbol ends up being -8. You can't take the square root of -8. This one you can't do the math there. You get no solutions. Okay? You're either going to get positive, 0, or negative. If it's positive, you write 2 solutions. If it's 0, you write 1. What's up? A, B, C. C. Yes or no? It says B squared minus 4AC. B is -6. A is 1. And C is 11. You can write on top of your paper, you can write AX squared plus BX plus C. All right. Okay? Oh, by the way, that's the whole class right there. Nothing else. We're going to do some examples, but there's nothing but that. You just take B squared minus 4AC, you get a number. If it's positive, the answer is 2. If it's 0, the answer is 1. If it's negative, the answer is none. Yeah, that's it. It's called the discriminant. So let's do some. I'm trying to show you here that if you get a positive number, you get 2 solutions. If you get 0, it's 1 solution. If you get a negative number, it's no solutions or 0. Sophia, A, B, and C, what are they?
50.
Sophia, what are A, B, and C? Say again? There's only one problem here. What's A, B, and C? It goes AX squared plus BX plus C. So what are the values A, B, and C on that one? Keep talking. No. That's not a 3. There you go. And C is, I throw A, B, and C into that equation right there. -3 squared is?
9.
By the way, if you square a positive or negative number, you always get a positive number.
It's 9.
So you can kind of ignore if B is negative, right? It's 9. Hey, right here, I'm going to have a negative number. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 5 is
40.
So you're going to get a positive or negative number. When you do that math, you're going to have positive or negative. What does it say happens if you get a negative number? No solutions or 0 solutions. The fact that you get -31, you don't even need to do that math. You can stop right there. Yes, if it ever says what is the discriminant, it's -31. But technically, they're asking you how many solutions. There's no solutions. This would be one where you're trying to take the square root of a negative number. You can't take the square root of a negative number. Remember, B squared minus 4AC comes from the inside of the quadratic formula, underneath the square root. Why is this one weird? Why is this one weird? And it's supposed to equal 0. So what do? Subtract 7 on both sides. First step. If you're going to make a mistake, that's where your mistake is going to go. Kaylee, A, B, C. Not any X. It's just A. Yes. No. There you go. Throw those numbers in. That's going to give me 25. Ooh, really, really big number. Hey, smarty pants out there. What's a negative times a negative? You can stop right there. Why? Are we going to get a positive, negative, or 0? There's no way to get a negative. There's no way to get 0 because we're not subtracting any longer. A negative times a negative is a positive. So I don't need to do the math. I can. What's the answer? Go ahead, Landon. I said 5 minutes ago I'm done, by the way. So the only thing left is just examples. What's the answer? Is it 1, none, or 2 solutions? Is this going to result in a positive number, a negative number, or 0? When you square a number, can you ever get a negative? This is always going to be positive. When you multiply negative times a negative, what are you going to get? How could you get a negative number if both numbers are positive? So are you going to get a negative, a positive, or zero? So therefore the answer is? If we get zero, there's one solution. If we get a positive number, two solutions. Negative. You guys probably need to, you're not catching on, you need to write that down in your notes. This is mathematically what a mathematician would say. Maybe you need to write, if you get a positive number, there are two solutions. If you get a negative number, zero solutions or no solutions. And if you get zero, it's one solution. Okay? The fact that you get these, this part is immaterial. It's not part of the, I don't care that's 193. I mean, I do, but I don't need it for the answer. The answer is two solutions. Who's lost? It's just b squared minus, it's the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac. Sophia, a, b, and c are the first one. I'm going to throw those values into b squared minus 4ac. But why'd you write 3 up? Because those are the 3 possible answers. I write those values into it. No, I didn't, sorry. So we get negative 2 squared minus 4 times negative 2. Sorry, positive 2. B is positive 2. A and C, negative 4. Hey, smarty pants, look at it. Is this going to give me a positive or negative number, this part?
Negative.
You're done. Because that's only going to give me 4, and 4, this is going to be a big number.
Those are negatives.
And those are all negative, so it winds up with a negative. So I can stop right there. As soon as you can determine whether the answer is positive, negative, or 0, you can stop. Yes, you continue it on. Okay, that's 4 minus 32, right?
Yeah.
Which equals what? Negative 28. Somebody already said. I don't care. It's not part of the answer. It's part of, is it positive, negative, or 0? It's negative, so there's no solutions. The fact that the discriminant is negative 28 is, okay, great. But the real answer is no solution. Who's lost? Yes?
So if it had only one answer, so it would be the middle.
Well, remember, if the answer to the discriminant is negative, it's one of those ones where the parabola lives either above the x-axis or below. It never crosses, right? There's no solution to ones that visually look like this. Mathematically, what does it look like in the quadratic formula? It means what happens underneath the square root symbol is negative. You can't take the square root of a negative number, at least until algebra 2. At end of class. What's wrong with this one, Hannah? What? So A, B, and C. Okay, so we get what? Negative 7 squared. If you realize what's going on, it doesn't matter whether it's positive or negative, the B value, because you're going to square it. It's always going to be positive. What really boils down, if you really want to, look at it with a microscope, it's the 4AC that really drives the train here. Minus 4, A she said was 1, and C she said was negative 10. What's a negative times a negative?
Positive.
I can stop right there. This one's always positive, and if that one's positive, you can't get to 0 or negative if both numbers are positive. You can't add two numbers that are not 0 and get to 0. You can subtract, you can't add. So you can stop right there. Turns out the discriminant is what? 40 plus 40, 89? But who cares? The answer is 2. I never, once I figured this out, that, well, they don't really want me to find this number. They just want me to say how many solutions. Yes? How I got what? I subtracted 10 from both sides. Remember, it's got to say equals 0. This says equals 0. This one doesn't. So step number 1, subtract 10 from both sides. So you get x squared minus 7x minus 10 equals 0. And then you have your A, B, and C. Equation right here. It's just B, the discriminant is B squared minus 4AC. So B was -7, A was 1, and C was -10. B squared would be, well, okay, technically it's -7 squared minus 4. A is 1 and C was -10, but a negative times a negative is a positive. It's always 4.
Oh, because when A is always attached to x squared, and then B is attached to the next x, it's just it goes in alphabetical.
Oh, that doesn't matter how you write it.
Oh.
By the way, the reason why I wrote B first is because what I'm looking at for this particular one, it starts with B. So if I were just plugging the numbers in, my eyeball wouldn't go to A first, it would go to B first. Okay? That's why I wrote B first. All right, last one. Why is it 0? Well, let's see. What's A? What's B?
256 plus 256.
So we get what? We get B squared, that's 16 squared, minus 4. A is 1. In fact, when A is 1, I don't even write A. It's just 1. So it's 4 times, oh my word, are these numbers ugly.
It equals 0.
Turns out when you do that math, it's 256
256
minus 256, which is 0. But once again, in yellow here, these aren't the answers. Those are the answers that tell us what the final solution will be. Final solution is it negative, is it positive, or is it 0? The ones that are negative, no solution. The ones that are positive, 2 solutions. The ones that are 0, 1 solution. Yeah. I didn't hear what you said, finally. Okay. I got nothing. Usually at this point, I show a video. If you haven't realized it already, there's a button right here on your graphing calculator. Right here, it says PGM. That's what that stands for.
Program.
You can program your graphing calculator. It's a computer. You can program it if there's a language. There's a quick video, and for kids that are interested, they can literally write a computer program. It's very easy to do, to have your calculator do everything we just did.
Oh, I can do that.
So usually at this point, it goes a little bit quicker, right, than we did. And I say, all right, you guys want to learn how to program your computer? And kids will say yes, and then I play the video. But we don't have to do that. Going back to this, does anyone not think they could do this for homework? Okay, where do you think you're going to trip up at? You got to talk a little bit louder. Okay, you are going to give me an equation that you are going to make up, and we're going to do it together. So you are going to give me a quadratic equation that equals 0. Let's do it. Give me a quadratic equation. Just make it up. Negative 3x squared x plus 10 equals 0. Let's see how many solutions this has. We start off with b squared. This is the discriminant. B squared minus 4 times a times c. Off to the side, we need what a is, what b is, and what c is. What's a, b, and c? By the way, you guys get started at home. All of them, plug and shove. So that's going to be negative 5 squared minus 4. A is negative 3, and C is 10. Some people can do this in their head. Hey, is this going to be a big or small number?
It's 120.
So is it going to be a big or small number? Is it going to be bigger or smaller than that?
Bigger.
It has no solutions.
It's 5 minus 120, which is no solution.
Yeah. Oh, it's positive. So it has 2 solutions. Kaylee, If you can't see that, a lot of kids can see that, but if you can't see that, then we just do the math. Negative 5 squared is 25. A negative times a negative is a positive. There's 12. There's 120. At this point, you should stop right there. You can tell the answer is going to be positive, so it has 2 solutions. And you're done. Every problem tonight for homework is going to be like that. Like, that's the process. That's the whole darn thing. We're simply plugging numbers into the discriminant. You want to do another? Okay. No. Bell hasn't rung.
Wait for the bell. Has the other bells rung? Yep.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm tone deaf now. I'm like,
Tone deaf?
not that. I mean, like, I feel like I can't hear the bells anymore.
Well, let's see. Where's my calculator? We go to school for 10 months a year.
Well, that's
There are
crap.
4 weeks in every month. So that's what? 40 weeks. There's 5 days in every week. That's 200. There are 2 bells at the start of the period, 2 bells at the end of the period.
So that'd be like
There are 8 periods,
16.
but we got to subtract the fact that, no, it's 16. So times 16. You've heard the bell 3,200 times this year.
Feels like twice.
Now, it's not really that because we had quarantine a couple times. But
A couple is 2.
How many more days do you have?
didn't we only have it 3 times?
We were just.
We had it right before Thanksgiving. We had it right before spring break and right after spring break. That's all I remember. That's all I remember.
I feel like 15 days.
I don't know why, but it feels like we had more.
And if I had to count the number of homeworks